Hi, this is H.C. Bailey, and welcome back to Let's Play Final Fantasy II. Today, let's figure out how I'm going to arrange my party. Now, I recommend having a dedicated black magic user, a dedicated sword wielder, and a dedicated white magic user, so that way they can best make use of each of those aspects of the game. Now, Maria is the obvious choice to make the black magic user, since she starts with the most intelligence, 15. So yeah, I'm going to do that. Guy would make the obvious choice to be the sword wielder, because he starts with the most power, and that also affects hit percentage. So I'm going to make him the dedicated sword wielder. He's not going to be doing anything with magic. And, well, that would leave Furion with the white magic, because no, I'm not going to have him be the sword wielder, that's for sure. You could also make Guy the white magic user, because everyone starts with 10 soul, I think, don't they? Yeah, so I mean, anyone could really be the white magic user, but I want to make Furion fulfill that role. So now for the equipment, you basically want everyone to use a shield, and then stick to one specific weapon type. So that would eliminate fists and bows right off the bat, because they're two-handed weapons, so that leaves 5 weapons. Now mid-game, the 4th party member is going to stick around for quite a while, actually, for like about a third of the game, I'd say, and they use knives, so I'm going to avoid dedicating any of my main party members to using knives, and plus they're pretty weak too. So now the remaining, so that leaves well, since Guy's going to be using swords, that leaves canes, spears, and axes as the remaining weapons. So for the remaining 3, I like axes the least for a few reasons. I mean, early on they are pretty strong. They're the strongest weapon type early in the game, but they really bottom out mid-game, which I consider to be the hardest part of the game, really. And also, they have the lowest hit percentage of those 3 weapons. And finally, you're going to find more canes and spears in chests early on when you're short on money compared to, say, later in the game. So I'm going to have Furion use spears and Maria use canes to facilitate that goal. Now here's something that a lot of people don't know about equipment. Now, you know equipment has weight, which decreases your evade, right? I mean, this can be easily observed on your status menu by equipping something and taking a look at your evade there. However, equipment also has a weight on your intelligence and soul stats. The given term for this that I've heard is an armor's int soul penalty, or magic penalty. I'll use those terms interchangeably. Usually I'll call it an int soul penalty, short for intelligence or soul. Now, that means that equipping heavy weapons, shields, and armor will drastically reduce your intelligence and soul during battle. Now, you can't see it on your status screen like you would with the physical weight of a piece of armor. But yeah, I mean, like a shield, for example, will reduce your intelligence and soul by 70, which at this point in the game is not as big a deal, but later on it can really hurt. And this affects like the hit percentage of your spells, like heal and life, and also the damage your spells can deal. I mean, you won't notice it very much early on, but later on you will. So now to counteract this penalty of equipment, you need to wear equipment that has a low int soul penalty. Coincidentally, this usually turns out to be equipment that is low in weight, physical weight too, which is good for your evade. So I'm not going to go over what int soul penalties there are for every single piece of equipment, but if you just follow what I do, you'll be fine. So now in future versions of the game, weapons and shields don't suffer from these int soul penalties. However, they do here. So to compensate, well, let's take a look at the equipment. Now you have a right-handed weapon and a left-handed weapon. You also can equip 2 items as well. So what you do to compensate for your weapons and shield having those int soul penalties, in battle, you can simply swap your weapon and shield into your item slots. It's just like clicking and dragging something. So they won't weigh down your magic for that round of battle, and then you can equip them back too. You can also equip other weapons in these slots too. So if you want to swap like a weapon that's only good for certain situations, you can keep it here and then swap it in, which you couldn't do in Final Fantasy 1. I really like how they did that. I think that's pretty cool. So most of the time, I usually don't worry about swapping my weapons in and out. But like, let's say you really need a life spell to work, you're going to want to take remove your weapon and shield out of there, so that way it's not weighing down your soul, for example. Now, a few things about battles. I already talked about how your front and back rows function during battle. You press select, and you can move someone into the front or back row. For the purpose of gaining HP, we're going to leave everyone in the front row, except for certain situations like boss fights, and I'll let you know about that. Now, in the not-too-distant future, you're going to run into groups of 5 or more monsters with... Now, with physical attacks, you can only hit monsters in the front 2 rows. They look like columns, actually, but they're the rows of the enemies. So, however, magic and bows can still hit anyone. Now, just so you know, this game still doesn't implement auto-targeting. It works just like Final Fantasy 1. So, to multi-target with spells, you just press left all the way or up all the way, depending on whether you're targeting your allies or your enemies. Maybe you have to hit right to target all your allies, but basically, I mean, it's similar to other Final Fantasy games. You can switch between single targeting and multi-targeting. So, but naturally, if you multi-target, the damage is going to split up, not so evenly, but it works that way. It also lowers the hit percentage of your spells as well. And finally, you might ask, why monsters seem to drop random amounts of gil? It's not really fixed per enemy, so to speak. The reason for that is every monster has a drop table of 8 fixed amounts of gil, or an item, of varying degrees of rarity. And when a monster is defeated, they will always drop something from their drop table. But naturally, winning 50 gil from a goblin is going to be more rare than winning 12 gil, let's say. So, let's see, I think that's everything I wanted to cover here, but if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. You can post a comment below, or, send a private message to me. So, let's figure out what I'm going to buy here. I'll talk to everyone in the next episode, because I'm getting a little short on time here. Okay, well, first things first, let's strip everyone down. Yeehaw! Well, not exactly. No, I'm going to leave the buckler on Furion, because I'll get another weapon for him. And Maria, we're just going to strip down like that. And Guy, I'm going to remove his stuff too. But I do want to equip him with the broadsword, because I want him to start working on his skill in swords. So let's head down to the armor shop here. Okay, now I want to get a buckler for Guy, so that way he can start working on developing his skill in shields. And eventually I want to get a buckler for Maria, but I have other priorities. At least in my opinion. Okay, now I want Furion to start working on spears, so let's get a javelin for him. And yeah, let's sell all this other stuff. The reason I don't want to equip any armor or any of this stuff is because that's going to lower your evade. And there's going to be armor later on in the game that gives you more defense than evade. But for right now, I mean, all that leather stuff is useless because it weighs more than it gives you defense. And evade is just so important. So basically, I'm not going to be using armor for a little while here. So let's give Furion the javelin there. Now, eventually, you'll also want to buy a cane for Maria, so she'll have a cane and a buckler. But the reason I'm not getting a weapon or a shield for Maria is because I think it's really more important for her to start working on her magic, because as she casts magic, she'll start developing it, and she'll start gaining a little bit of intelligence, which I think is really more important. And also, you want to get fire up to level 2, which is the spell I'm going to get. I'm going to get fire. You want to get that up to level 2 really quickly, so that way you can start killing large groups of goblins, which give the most gold early on in the game. So now the reason I'm getting fire... Oh, well, actually, first, I'm going to get Cure for Furion eventually, but not right now. I'm going to save up for the gold for that. But anyway, I'm getting fire for Maria, even though you can find it in the first dungeon, because I just really don't like learning Bolt and Ice. By the time... well, first, there's a few enemies that are weak to Bolt early in the game, but they're weak to other elements, too, so why bother? And by the time you run into enemies that are only weak to Bolt, you'll have other ways of dealing with them, so I don't think you really need it. Ice, there's only like 2 instances early in the game where you really need ice. There's 2 mini-bosses that are turtles that are weak to ice, but it's only those 2 instances, and there's ways of getting around that. So I'm not even going to bother practicing ice, only to use it on 2 enemies. And by the time you run into more enemies that are weak to ice, you will have other ways of dealing with them. So I really do need something for Maria to work on, so I'm going to get fire now and give that to her. So the way you learn it for her is you select the book and you give it to Maria like so. So the reason I'm learning fire is because there's so many enemies that are weak to fire, more than any other element in the game. So I think that's the best way to start working on Maria. So that's all the stuff that I'm going to get from my party for now. Between now and the next video, I'm going to purchase the cane and buckler for Maria and a cure spell for Furion. So I'll do that between this video and the next one. So that's all for this episode of Let's Play Final Fantasy II. This is HC Bailey signing off. Have a good day.